Good morning, and welcome to a virtual service of worship with All Souls Unitarian Church of Indianapolis. I am Sandy Reed Ryberg, as Greg said, serving as today's worship associate. All Souls is an inclusive congregation where our purpose is to put love into action. We are a covenantal congregation that continually renews our promise to try to live each of the elements of our covenant. We try to live our mission of putting love into action and to honor the inherent worth and dignity of all humans. We invite you to bring your whole self and all of your lived experience to this gathering. We are still taking all possible measures to protect each other's health during the ongoing and resurging coronavirus pandemic, including meeting virtually as we are today on Facebook Live and Zoom. If you have joined us today because you are searching for community, we are so glad that you are here, and we invite you to browse our website at www.allsoulsindy.org, all lowercase, if you have questions about this church or about Unitarian Universalism. There you will find information about us and contact information for our very capable staff. Later in the service, we will provide a link to an online connection card where you can learn about upcoming opportunities for safe interaction with All Souls, including ways to work for social justice. If you're joining us for the first time, we invite you to use the connection card to provide us with your contact information so that we may reach out to you. Our interim minister, Reverend Joel Miller, will explore today some aspects of masks and how we use them, other than to request Halloween treats, which I hope you received in good measure yesterday. We invite you to join us now in worship as we light our covenant and repeat our as we light our chalice and repeat our covenant. Lighting our chalice today is Reverend Miller from our sanctuary. Please join me in repeating our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. We join now in a hymn. We Wear the Mask by Paul Laurence Dunbar. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile. and mouth with myriad subtleties, why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh, great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but the clay is vile beneath our feet, and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. We Wear the Mask by African-American poet Paul Laurence Dunbar describes one of the most common feelings about masking ourselves, that of hiding our true feelings from others. I want to tell you a story I think of every time I go to vote. My grandmother, Lucy Jenkins Clapp Reed, died when my dad, Horace Reed, was only 13 years old. The story he always told us was that she had a stroke after she'd been out walking around the neighborhood collecting money for her church. It made him not like churches very much. But later, when I grew up, we made contact with another relative of my grandmother's who had letters that she had written in that same year that she died. And she had written one letter to her sister. And she told her sister that she had lied to her husband and she wasn't actually going out collecting money for the church. She was collecting signatures on a petition to get women the right to vote. She couldn't tell her husband that because he didn't think that women should have the right to vote. The mask my grandmother wore for her husband, thankfully, is no longer necessary. And every time I vote, I think about my grandma Lucy, and I think about how I can vote because she went out with a mask on, not a real mask, an imaginary one, and got women and other people who thought women should be able to vote the right to do that. So I'm always very proud, and I think of my grandma when I vote.
Good morning, everyone. For those who may not know me, my name is Sarah Cannon, and I am your Director of Children's and Community Programming. And I'm curious to see how many people wore masks today. I'm looking at my computer screen here. I did bring one with me. In fact, I may have brought a couple with me. I love seeing everyone's Halloween costumes. This week, my children, Evan and Graham and I went to the zoo, and everyone was wearing their costumes. We saw unicorns, we saw a lion and a tiger hugging each other. We saw an amazing scarecrow, and we saw multiple baby Yodas. We even saw a baby dressed as Baby Yoda. It was a time. A lot of us use costumes to pretend to be our heroes, the people that we aspire to be, our favorite things. And that's great, right? I mean, pretending to be someone who goes out and does great and heroic things, it's kind of like hero practice. And sometimes it's fun to be a villain too, because most of us aren't villains in real life. But you know, Halloween isn't the only time we wear masks. Sometimes we wear a mask by not reacting to things that affect us. A faith formation class I taught had a conversation about this once, and it went something like this. I volunteer at a historical site where I dress up in a costume and tell other people how things used to be in the past. But I don't talk about it at school because some people make fun of me. I don't tell people where I go to church because they tell me it's not a real church if people are allowed to believe different things. I sit with the same people at lunch every day because other kids make comments about the food that we're eating. People say my name wrong all the time, and I don't want to make a big deal about it, but it does bother me. All of these kids, these brave, smart kids I looked forward to seeing every week, every single one of them felt like they had to hide some part of themselves. They felt like it was easier, less hassle. Thinking back, I realized that I sometimes did the same thing when I was a kid and when I was an adult, too. I was disappointed that they were having that same experience. And we all know it gets even worse than that sometimes, right? Some of the things that make us want to hide behind a mask are mean and untrue stereotypes. They're hurtful comments or things that sound like questions, but they're not really questions. Or even insults about the way we look or who we love, about who we are. Nobody should have to put up with that. But sometimes it's hard to be brave for other people and maybe for ourselves most of all. Our goal as Unitarian Universalists is to make sure that masks are fun, but unnecessary. And some of the Holy Scriptures from our sources back us up. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 15, the Bible says, "No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house." It kind of reminds me of a hymn we sing, "This Little Light of Mine." Our first principle tells us that each and every one of us has that light inside of us. And the Bible says that we should show it. The Quran tells us something similar in Surah Baqarah. It says not to cast yourself into deprivation with your own hands. This sounds really fancy, but what it means is that sometimes people are going to do things or things are going to happen to us that affect us in a negative way, but we don't have to help them do it. Instead, the Quran tells us to do things that are beautiful because Allah loves those who do things that are beautiful. And Buddha tells us that our life is shaped by our mind, by what we think. So if we keep thinking that we need to hide part of who our true selves are, that could become a pattern that could be a larger problem for us down the road. I sent you a mask in Dear Families this week. It's blank. You can print it out, or you can look at it on your computer screen and you can trace it and make a mask of your own. But we're going to flip the whole idea of masks right on its head. Instead of making a mask that disguises who you are, I'm inviting you to decorate the mask in a way that reveals who you are, some essential quality about yourself. Hang it somewhere where you can see it when you're doing e-learning or at times when you think you might need a little dose of bravery, and use it to remind you to look for that light in other people as well, like the Bible says, or to look for the beautiful things that other people do, like the Quran says, or to look for the ways that people think and what it reveals about who they are, like the Buddha says. Thank you.
Honoring the ones who came before us. Honoring the ones who came before us. Honoring the ones who came before us. Honor them with song. To women back 1,000 generations. Grandmothers, daughters, mothers, aunts, sisters, who worked towards curing our survival. I want to thank you for every sacrifice. You chose to live together, not in and cultivated food to meet the family's needs. I want to thank you for your courageous hearts. You passed along the skills to heal with plants and seeds of birthing and of death and women's mysteries. By teaching what you learned, you'll help us to succeed. I want to thank you for your legacy to women back 1,000 generations. Grandmothers, daughters, mothers, aunts, and sisters who walked the world securing our survival. I want to thank you for every sacrifice. Honoring the ones who came before us. Honoring the ones who came before us. Honoring the ones who came before us. Honor them with song.
When Reverend Miller said he would be exploring the idea of masks in today's sermon, my first thought was a self-reminder to wash my current anti-COVID mask collection so that I'd be sure to have a clean one when I went to an early voting site on the day I planned to exercise my right to vote. I was very pleased when I was standing in line for more than 3 hours, by the way, that every single person I saw among the more than 1,000 who were in line with me waiting to vote was wearing a mask. We are wearing cloth masks right now to protect ourselves against a dangerous and spreading virus. But we wear imaginary masks every day of our lives to protect ourselves in other ways, like Sarah talked to you about a few minutes ago. We wear masks to make social interaction go more smoothly. I'm fine, thank you, with a smile, even if we're actually suffering inside. Or, yes, sir, I'll do that, to someone who might have just insulted us with a request to do something outside our own cultural comfort zone. When we're little children, we learn to play peekaboo and hide and seek. My grandchildren, from the 2-year-old to the 14-year-old, love these games. Let me tell you a story that came strongly to mind when I thought about hiding our feelings and sometimes our actions from those we love in order to protect our relationships. My son, who's now 43 and a parent to 2 of those grandchildren I mentioned earlier, was very good at hiding things from his father and me in his youth. It kept him out of trouble more than once. He was a very good actor, and he had a scholarship in theater to Denison University in 1995. However, he also found himself in trouble soon after arriving at Denison for involvement with marijuana. We sent him back for his sophomore year, not knowing that he actually would not be enrolled there and would in fact face some serious consequences. During the summer before all of this happened, I overheard his conversation with a friend of ours about how things were going at school. The friend is a university professor, and he was sharing that he was unhappy about some of the things and the courses that he was teaching, but he couldn't let his students know that. Well, said my son, we all wear masks at certain times, don't we? I had an inkling then that something might be wrong. I didn't know that in 1996, I would accompany my son to exercise his right to vote for the first time, but that ironically, the next day, he was returning to face those consequences I talked about for use of marijuana. 25 years later, our views about marijuana have evolved somewhat, and he wouldn't have faced those same consequences. I'm grateful for the many masks that protect us and grateful for the many masks that we have been able to cast aside. I hope that we need fewer and fewer masks as we go forward with each other in a life based on honesty and trust. Thank you.
Good morning. I have my snakes with me this morning. I don't know if you can all see them. They have been keeping me company for the last couple days. I love the story of Medusa. I love the Gorgons, and I love all the turning to stone, and I love the just reptilian nature of it all. And you might be wondering why I chose Medusa for our Sunday service this morning. And it's because we are celebrating All Hallows Eve. We are celebrating Samhain, where we give thanks for those who came before us. And that's the thing I love about the story of Medusa, is that she is this empowered woman who is then punished, and yet she's the goddess of art, of literature, of philosophy. And so I'm dressed as Medusa today, and I've got my animal fur as well. And I want to give thanks in our joys and sorrows section for the women who have come before us, for the Jane Fishers, for the Billie Averys who fought for women's right to control their own bodies and make decisions about our autonomous selves, about the right to reproduction. I want to give thanks for famous suffragettes like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who have given us the right to cast our vote. Not me, I'm not American, but all of you that can cast your vote owe it to a legacy of women, a legacy of Medusas, of all the women who have been pointed at and stared at and laughed at for the crown of snakes on their head. We give thanks to you. And we also give thanks to those in this congregation who have come before us, who have paved the way for this community to exist, paved the way for us to be inclusive and whole and loving, and in so many ways, uniquely all souls. And in that spirit, I ask you to look at the hearts, in our hearts, thoughts and prayers section, and remember John Murphy in your thoughts this morning as he recovers from surgery, as well as Carol Miller. Also, I want to mention Joan Bassan, who's struggling with shingles at the moment. As all of you know, the Bassans have been a cornerstone of the community, and we give thanks for those people that came before us. And I wish you a good Samhain. Thank you.
Masks. In the womb of this world, in the womb of our hearts, a place where darkness and warmth can become a canvas for creativity, where darkness and warmth can bring our very lives to face the world. Food and earth become our bodies. Our joys in life bring forth smiles, our sorrows, sighs, or tears. We are preparing for this in every moment, to be born, to become alive again. Let our faces become images of love. May our bodies be the presence of justice, of compassion. And now in this silence, may we bring forth what is beautiful within us and cherish what is around us. Amen. So be it. Blessed be.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blowing the wind, rising the sea. Move in the hand, giving life a shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
The three of us in the sanctuary this morning, we're being very cautious, following the policies of our COVID safety team. So many years ago, my daughter wore a ladybug costume for Halloween. She was 3 years old, her first time trick-or-treating. She was vaguely aware that she was wearing a costume and trying to make sense of what was going on. Her brother was, back then there were Power Rangers. If you're old enough to remember those, he was very into Power Rangers. I stayed at home and handed out candy at the front door to all the other creatures and beasts and personalities that came up demanding candy. When my family returned, my daughter saw me. She ran up to me. Her face was completely covered in chocolate, and she was completely wired. She was on a major sugar buzz. She joyfully reminded me as she ran up, "I'm a ladybug. Give me money. Give me candy." There's been much trick-or-treating this year, and I miss it. I miss the sweetness of seeing young children discovering the power of masks and costuming. And I like to watch all of us as we see older children and we see adults all playing with the power of masking and unmasking. The customs of going from house to house and in costumes and masks, they arrived in the United States with Scottish and Irish immigrants in the late 1800s. There are even ancient records, though, that describe these same customs of masks, of going around the community, of candles put into vegetables, and begging for treats while doing all of that. It's part of an ancient Celtic holiday called Samhain. And Samhain is actually a word still in use in the southwestern parts of Ireland, where Gaelic is still primarily spoken, or in those few parts of Scotland where Scottish is still spoken. Samhain was the beginning of the new year for the ancient Celts. The new year was the time when the boundary between this life and the afterlife was at its thinnest. So the reason for the frightening masks and the crazy lanterns made of vegetables, they were meant to be scary. They were to encourage the spirits of the dead to stay over there on the other side, or to go and, if they died in that year, to make their way on to the afterlife. Last year, our masks and costumes for Halloween were a lot of fun, and this year, masks. I don't like masks this year, I have to admit, but I wear them. We're wearing them for one another. Well, as it turns out, only about half of people in the United States are wearing a mask, or at least that was true about 4 weeks ago. Epidemiologists estimate that if 95% of Americans would wear a mask whenever they went out, we would save 130,000 lives by this coming February. But not wearing a mask, it's become a symbol of freedom, a symbol more important than a human life, or 130,000 human lives. What has that unmasked among us all? What's unmasked has always been there. And that's why Halloween is a powerful holiday. It plays with symbols. It plays with symbols that include death, disguise, images of what's not yet created or what's not yet possible. Children learn the ancient power of masks. Little girl knows at some wordless level that she is frail and vulnerable, and we live in a chaotic world, so she puts on a Wonder Woman costume, and for a day she can be in control of the world. Another child knows that difficult journeys are ahead and puts on the courage of Harry Potter. A straight high school boy, soon to be a man, lives in this world of impossible expectations. On Halloween night, he might dress as a girl. He wouldn't admit to it probably, but he might be imagining having the emotional freedom that we do give to girls and to women. We do all wear masks and costumes. I'm in my tie and my jacket, itself a kind of costume. They can become invisible to us. We grow used to them. We seek to be unmasked, to be as true and transparent to one another as we can be. But we're never fully unmasked. I always remember this when, well, in a time before masks, I would be reminded of it because I would be at the grocery store and I would run into somebody from church, and I was so out of context, I wouldn't recognize them, and often they wouldn't recognize me, and we'd be staring at each other for a moment like, I know that person. Oh yeah, hi, how you doing? It's interesting that scientists, when they study how brains work, they can measure changes in our brain structure and chemistry when we recognize someone. And if we recognize someone that's in a different context, it's amazing how we inhabit even different parts of our brains. Masks may be metaphors, they may be symbols as I speak about them to you. But the metaphor is not a fiction. Our bodies are shaped by the masks we wear and the masks we take off. I'd forgotten about that poem that Sandy read, Paul Laurence Dunbar. It's been some years, and I started reading it again, and I remembered, oh my gosh, that poem. He was the first nationally known Black poet in the United States. Here's a few of the lines from that poem again. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. Why should the world count all our tears and cries? Let them only see us while we wear the mask. That poem still describes an aspect of what it means to be in the United States, especially for a Black person, a Black American. It's called code switching. If you haven't heard of code switching, I encourage you to listen to the NPR program called Code Switch. So 125 years ago, a Black person needed to put on a mask of contentment. They needed to put it on for the comforts of white people. And our Black people still have to do this, even today. Anytime a Black person is with white people in a white context, they have to talk white, they have to speak white, they have to code switch. There are so many beautiful and distinct Black communities. I just came from Louisiana, where I was serving as an interim minister. And the diversity down there was really quite remarkable. and a lot of code switching down there too. Code switching is something Black folks do because that's how they survive in a world that's largely created and governed by white folks in the United States. So they can switch from the language and the words and the subtleties of their own culture to the subtleties and the languages and codes of white culture. Now, I'm just figuring this out. I'm no expert on it, but I can tell you this. These incredibly heavy masks can come off if you are a white guest in a Black home and the folks in that home are so comfortable with you, they don't code switch to keep you comfortable. That is an amazing experience. Zen Buddhism has a spiritual practice of koans, a paradoxical question showing the inadequacy of logical reasoning and instead encouraging enlightenment. One of the most famous Zen koans is, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" And one of my favorite Zen koans is this other one. "Show me your original face before you were born." Think of my daughter at first Halloween, her beautiful innocent face, and then her beautiful innocent face smeared with chocolate. She was covered. That originality in a young child's face. She was in a costume, but she was, and she might have been covered in chocolate, but she was unmasked. Her joy, her lust for the chocolate and the sweets. But the koan's not really about a face. It's another way to ask, what is our original identity? Well, we know masks can be used to disguise. So most children learn to act like they're glad when they have to share a toy, when they're actually annoyed. Poker players learn to mask their reactions, or better yet, to put on a mask with a fake reaction. Hopefully they can bluff their opponents and pull in the pot. Black folks learn to wear a mask of whiteness around white folks. Queer folks in a red state area of America, or in South America, or in Africa or Asia, often have to wear the masks of heterosexuality. We wear masks for good reasons too, because we want to show how much we care for each other and our world. But masks can do more than cover or project something that's maybe not fully there. Masks can transform us also. There are always parts of us that are raw, unformed, vulnerable. There are parts of us we might cover until they're ready to be shown. The Zuni people of New Mexico say that masks have a power. That power is beautiful and dangerous. Masks in many cultures may hold the presence of a god or gods, perhaps a demon, an angel, or for those of us who are not theistic, a mask might hold the idea of a universal experience that transcends even the individuality of that person who wears the mask. I put my jacket and tie on, not because I want to disguise myself. Some days I put a stole on because I want to be in a costume that shows why I am present the way that I am. I go out into the world and I represent you as a congregation. And if I wear a stole, or if necessary, in a demonstration, perhaps a collar, I wear it as a symbol that you have sent me out to love the world, to bring justice to the world. I'm not there on my own authority, but on ours. Just a side note, there's some etiquette around masks. Never put on a mask that is not yours, at least not if you don't have permission. it can be very dangerous, as the Zuni people would say. I think there was a movie about a guy who put on the mask of Loki and then couldn't get it off, and things got a little crazy. Masks show up in interesting ways. Did many weddings years ago. I was serving a congregation in Buffalo with a wonderful traditional center aisle, much like the center aisle here. It's a great place for a wedding, for a processional, especially a traditional one. One particular wedding I was doing, everyone was so nervous. The families were so nervous. They just wanted to get the wedding just right. So we rehearsed the day before the wedding. We had a careful rehearsal. The bride came down the aisle after everybody had found exactly the right place. She had a very long train on this dress. And so it was important to figure out how to get the train draped in a way. We wanted it to look good for the pictures. And we didn't want anyone to step on it. So we finished the rehearsal, pretty sure that we'd done everything the way it needed to be done. The day of the wedding, everybody came down, everything was going smoothly. The bride was coming down with her father. And just as they arrived at the front of the congregation, at the chancel, the father stepped on the bride's train, the long train of her wedding dress. There's another thing you need to know about this dress. Very long train, and it was strapless. If I could see the dressmaker now, I'd just, really? Of course, what happened? Dad stepped on the dress pulled down. Pretty embarrassing moment. The bridesmaids, of course, immediately surrounded the bride and put everything back together. Dad was in tears. The drama, it was like everything had been broken somehow. The wedding wasn't perfect anymore, and he'd embarrassed his daughter horribly. And this is the thing I think I appreciated the most in the moment. She was laughing. It was even on videotape. They had a videographer. It's how long ago this happened. It was on video. And the bride just laughed. She took her father into her arms and she said, it's fine. It's going to be one of the funniest home videos you ever saw. And everybody laughed and relaxed, and the masks were off. Pretense was gone. They got married because they loved each other. And the people that were with them were filled with joy, not because it was the perfect wedding, but because they loved each other. These are the kind of moments we're trying to create at church. These are the moments we long for when we're with family or with friends. When we can just be truly ourselves, or perhaps even to try on a mask, something new about the way we want to be in the world. That's something that's especially important about what we can give each other at church. This openness, this possibility to be creative with who we are. It's the heart of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. And from that heart, then, we understand how to take the power we find within and face the world with it, from that love, with compassion. We can unmask with each other what we hold most dear and show the world what it means to reveal love and beauty with trembling hearts. Our world needs to see us and how we do this with one another. Our country needs us now to live this way. Yes, to hold a mask over those parts of ourselves that live by fear or hate. More importantly, to drop the masks where we know love, where we know compassion, where we can find what brings us together. May we be this example to the world so that we bring the common good that we all need if we will survive and thrive.
Well, as you can see, I have found the mask that manifests my true self, and I'm sticking with it. And at this moment in the service, we always invite you to also find ways to manifest your true self. This mask does not represent the nervous, anxious person who is endlessly doom scrolling this week. It manifests the person that I want to be. And likewise, if you're experiencing a sense of inertia, please use our online connection card to sign up to go for a socially distanced hike at Skiles Test Park. If you're feeling a sense of anxiety, use it to reach out and find out more about the mask meditations that we're doing on the church grounds. If you're experiencing a sense of scarcity, use that connection card to volunteer to contribute to the Million Meal Marathon or to Habitat for Humanity. Comfort yourself by putting food in the mouths of people who need it. And if you're feeling disconnected, then sign up for one of our coffee dates with a member of another local faith community and meet someone new and reach out. And if you're a middle or high school youth, remember that you have youth group in 40 minutes and plan for this mask theme to be pretty thoroughly carried forward. Thank you.
Each week at All Souls, we share half of our collection plate with an organization that shares our values and works for similar goals as our congregation does. This week, I selected Second Helpings, originally founded in part by Kristen Cordoza Arnold Kinker, the daughter of now deceased All Souls member Dr. Bob Arnold. Second Helpings fights hunger and poverty in central Indiana through rescuing food that would otherwise be wasted, by teaching culinary and nutritional skills that transform lives, and by delivering more than 1 million meals each year to the central Indiana community. The effects of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic have made the work of Second Helpings more important than ever. You can find a link for our offering on your screen at this time and also in the chat function. Please join me now as we receive our morning offering. Thank you.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one another that we journey not alone. Joy and sorrow make us wise, kin to all that lives and dies. Love calls us on. Love calls us on.
This benediction begins with a line that comes from a poem written by June Jordan in 1978, a poem for South African women. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past and to face our future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold, courageous to face this new future. May we have faith in a future that is still forming, still unknown. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Go in peace. Be in peace.